The quick strength coach breakdown for all you friends out there looking to go into this industry. I'll just tell it to you like it is, and we'll go from there. Everyone, I just shouldn't say everyone, but we'll use a lot of broad brush terms here. Everyone thinks that they should or want to be in a collegiate or professional setting for strength conditioning. Mainly because in strength conditioning, for some reason, if you have a banner of a school or a logo on your chest, you feel like you're doing a better job. And then the unfortunate reality is strength conditioning at that level is highly contingent upon two things: the success of your coach. If your coach loses, they might fire everybody on staff, whether it's your fault or not. And secondly, it's highly contingent on the freedom you have. Certain coaches might have more freedom to do certain things. They might have more certain types of relationships with the coach themselves. And so they're able to do some creative aspects in training, which also involves not being blamed for everything under the sun. Typically in this organization, you have a head strength coach and maybe some assistants under you. For football, there's technically one head strength coach and then delegations under it, all the way down to a whole armada of interns. And then if you're like in basketball, you might be the only person there, or you might have an intern under you, or you might be you and an assistant. Totally depends on the school. But what people don't realize is that strength conditioning in the collegiate setting is great because the hours are kind of cool and you get to work with certain teams and athletes, and it might be exactly what you want. But it also kind of stinks at times because you have to travel with the team all the time, which people are like, oh, traveling's great. It's not that great. It really isn't. You have to get there before the players to get things ready. You stay there after the players. You aren't playing. You got to sit through the game. It's a lot of hours. It really is. If you're passionate about it, absolutely. It's great for you. If you want to be in that team setting and you're part of that and you love that, absolutely awesome. It seems like everyone at first gravitates towards football because football probably has a more highlight culture based lifting existence. Right? It makes a lot of sense. Run fast, get jacked. It's pretty tangible on the field. It's easy to understand. The impact lifting weights, specific, not training, but just lifting heavy weights can have on football is probably greater than any other sport. You could argue about wrestling and technique and stuff, and obviously football, there's tons of stuff that goes into it, but bigger, faster, stronger does matter to an extent in football, and lifting has a big impact. Because guys come in, they have to gain weight. They have really specific goals that lifting can, the traditional sense, can reach. The basketball world's a little bit different. Depends what school you're at. Especially, I don't know now, with the transfer portal, guys leaving, coming in, different training histories. They play so much basketball all the time. The impact is so high. So there's kind of this smorgasbord of stuff, but the reality is only certain people get paid in that genre of work. Depends what school you are, but the head guys obviously make the most, and the universities that are more prestigious make the most. So it's going to depend quite a bit on, does your coach actually win games? If they win games, are you going to be promoted with that coach? So on and so forth. Then there's the private sector, and the private sector, when I was a student and going through this process, is kind of poo-pooed. You're like, oh, that guy is just a private sector guy. And it was always labeled as the salesman, the person who's trying to pitch something that's different than the college weight program to get that person athletic. The reality is that's not totally the truth. That's kind of just a weird stigma that occurs when you go through strength conditioning in college, because typically you go through the biased lens of being in college. You think college is the best. I remember as a kid, oh, this was a college weight program from so-and-so, and you thought it was really good just because they had the label on it, but there's no rhyme or reason as to why it's really good other than the fact it has a label on it. There's no, you don't know any better. Like, this is an NBA strength program. Okay, is it bad or good, or what does that mean? Oh, so you kind of go through that world, but the reality is private sector is really cool because you have a lot more freedom, but the hours kind of suck at times because you're going to work when people aren't in school or aren't working. So you'll probably do mornings, you'll probably do evenings, and you maybe like that. And maybe there's a chunk of time in that middle day that allows you for freedom. And if you own your own place, everyone's like, I want to own my own place. That's a whole nother discussion in terms of equipment, purchases, cost, and overhead. But the reality is, being a private sector person obviously gives you more freedom. You are your own boss, but there is a sales marketing aspect to it. There's an urgency to it. Someone is not going to be mandated to stay with you for 4 years. You have to at least win them over. Being their, sometimes their confidant, right? You might be a friend as much as you are a trainer at times for some people, especially in maybe older adult populations. They want a trainer who they can really talk to, engage with, and enjoy, because that is a social event for them. For kids, maybe they want something fun and engaging that maybe isn't the 100% most effective. Because it's fun and engaging, they'll stay with it and they'll come back and they'll get better long term, but you have to keep them around. And so that's kind of the private side. In the private side, you have lots of freedom. So I work in the private side, and I can do a lot of stuff online, and I can do a lot of stuff in person. But my private side is a little different in terms of the work I do. A lot of people think professional athletes. I want to work with professional athletes. I'm in a lucky situation where I get to work with professional athletes, but I work with them on a very individual level, which isn't always conducive to everyone else. Like, I live in Iowa. That's not horribly expensive to live in. I don't have to pay ridiculous amounts of money in rent. There is no massive urgency to try and make as much money as humanly possible to keep afloat and buy groceries. It's just not the thing here, and blessed enough that there's tons of professional athletes in this area for some reason. But I don't work with all of them, and I work with maybe a select few that I think is a good relationship for me and them, because I have a background in sports science and strength conditioning, and this is a massive passion for me. I find it to be a huge responsibility whenever I take on a new client. As I sit here in the parking lot, like 7 a.m., got here early, waiting for someone to show up. They're not late, I'm just early. And I figured I'd make this video to share with you all, because there are gonna be times that you will show up early and you will do things that are weird hours, but because you're passionate about it and enjoy it, it's something that you're willing to do, and you care about the athlete and you care about the success. Not saying you don't care about every other athlete you work with, but the reality is, if you're working with 40 athletes, you can't put that time towards all 40 athletes. There's not enough time in a day. And so you'll have people who work into that field like myself, and those people can go different avenues. Maybe that person plays with a team. Sometimes the team themselves will hire that person so they can be that personal trainer for that player, because some of these players make tons of money. There are aspects within that where maybe someone opens up a facility and they train a couple professionals, highly detailed and, kind of close-knit group, but then they also might train a youth group where they kind of expose some of their training to a younger group, but in a more scaled fashion. The reality is, I think people are so quick to try and run with something that they don't understand what they're trying to do in the first place. For me, it's really about trying to make sure, if I do a really good job, someone told me this, if you do a really good job, the athlete will tell people you do a really good job. And they will be your biggest advocates, versus you trying to advocate to others that I work with this athlete, therefore I'm qualified. There's been athletes that I've worked with who never told anyone, and that's totally okay. I don't ask them to. There's been athletes who've told lots of people. There's been situations where I've had to turn down athletes and maybe accept other athletes, and whatever it might be, just based on circumstance and fit and what works best. But again, I'm in a unique situation where I work in that private side of things, where I can do that. Not everyone can, and not everyone should necessarily try and do that right off the bat. And then understanding the value you can get that's mutually beneficial for both people, because maybe sometimes the athlete you're working with, you as a strength coach, you as a performance coach, want to have more development in certain areas. And so when you take on a new athlete, maybe you take on a new athlete who's not as, esteemed as another one, but you're allowed to do more. You're allowed to better yourself. You're allowed to work on their skill. You're allowed to work on their training, X, Y, and Z, and everything in between. And because of that, you get to develop more skills yourself. And so you're always trying to get yourself better and balancing the act between you and your self-development and you and the athletes you train. So it's a song and dance that exists. And obviously there's the non-athlete side, which is totally awesome too. I worked in an older adult population healthy aging clinic, which was some of the most fun I've ever had training people. Man, they were engaged. They were awesome. Great people. That's something I would totally do again. It was really fun. Really, really enjoyable. Now, for my competitive drive, it wasn't the best ever, but it was absolutely a blast, and I loved every minute of it, and it was super fun. I know people who worked in group fitness who absolutely just make a killing, and they do a great job, and they absolutely love it because they get to lead the class and people really enjoy it. They come there to work. The point is, it's not end all be all with college athletics. There's opportunities out there, and just keeping an open mind in what you want to do and accomplish, and then balancing that between what do I need to do. So do I need to have a certain number of clients? Do I need to get a certain number of people in throughout the day? Or do you have the luxury to maybe just take X, Y, and Z, and you have those people around and you can focus on them and, do the best you can with them because that's the passion you want, or, whatever, maybe you subsidize it by doing small groups or camps or clinics. There's all these options out there. So my 2 cents, I'm going to go ahead in here and get things set up in a minute. I just want to share it with y'all. Hope you guys enjoy. Take care.